Louisville, Kentucky, on a hot August Friday back in 2014, The Purge began. You remember the movie The Purge, right? It was a fictional thriller that came out 1 year before the Louisville event. A thriller which asked the question, what if all crime was legal for one night, every year, like a holiday? Literally, all crime. Murder, theft, property damage. The movie starred Ethan Hawke and Lena Headey hiding in their mansion as gangs stalked their neighborhood. Well, in 2014, Louisville had their purge, and it was advertised on Twitter as a violent city free-for-all that would last 10 hours and 30 minutes. The original tweet was posted by an unnamed user with the message, "Who's trying to get the Louisville Purge started with me?" Funny joke, right? But later, other posters joined in, like Jeremy Daugherty, who tweeted promotional posters of the film, with Louisville photoshopped into the title. The tweets claim these Purge posters have been found all over the city. That same day, a Redditor user with the name of mbrit74 created a Louisville Purge megathread and attached it to an official Louisville subreddit where people started messaging each other about the upcoming violence. Later that night, a popular online magazine, Thought Catalog, published a live blog, which included reports about increased violence, explosions, and gunshots throughout the city. The next day, the Louisville Purge got picked up by Gawker, who called the Thought Catalog article a fictional account. During the following week, the Purge hoax was reported by the New York Daily News, the BBC, Time, People, E! Online, and Uproxx, as well as local stations and radio. The Louisville Purge may have been fabricated. It may have been a hoax, but the reactions, the money lost by the Louisville businesses was very real. You're listening to The Re-Engineered You. This is a podcast about self-empowerment and all the myths, lies, and misconceptions we tell ourselves. Then we use science and history to bust those myths and re-engineer a better you. I'm your host, Todd Laments, the extrovert.
And I'm the writer, researcher, and purger, Joe Anthony, whose job it is to dig through the outer layer of no duh on the internet and get us to the juicy facts.
In the AMC's show, Mad Men, Don Draper has this to say about how commercials dictate our perception of love. The reason you haven't felt it is because it doesn't exist. What you call love was invented by guys like me to sell nylons. You're born alone, you die alone, and this world drops a bunch of rules on top of you to make you forget those facts. Don Draper is a cynic, no doubt. But there's no denying that marketing, Disney, and Hallmark have influenced our expectations of romantic love. And if you don't believe me, watch the Facebook feed of all your single friends when Valentine's Day rolls around. Today, our topic is all about how Hollywood and marketing have colored our perceptions. To do this, we're busting 3 big blockbuster myths. Myth 1. As irrational adults, we can all separate TV from reality. There's no way commercials or movies are coloring our perceptions, right? Myth 2. Well, at least we have an idea of how successful we should be. We live in the real world, so we must have a firm grasp on how much things cost and what our family structure should look like. And myth 3. Well, at least we know what we want in a partner. There's no way our most fundamental need for human contact has been skewed by Hollywood, right? But first, Joe and I are going to reveal when we first started noticing our own perceptions being skewed and how it dealt a blow to our ego. Well, I want to talk to you about why we did this episode to begin with. TV, Joe, was my first true love.
Yeah.
Like any good American. When I was a kid, it was perceived that TV was bad for you. that it rotted your brain.
I was about to say those exact words.
So you heard that in your childhood too?
Yes, absolutely.
Now, a lot of my friends now, some of my uppity friends will say things like, I don't watch TV. And my even more uppity friends will say, I don't own a TV. Mm-hmm. But I'm quick to remind them that staring at a screen of YouTube videos all day is the same thing.
Yeah, not owning a TV is high and mighty until you see them surfing Facebook all day or playing Farmville all day. Then that goes right out the window.
So they figure out a way to fill that content time.
Right. Yeah, there's always something.
For me, TV was very powerful. It taught me how to interact with my friends. It taught me what the perfect family structure with this loving dad. Apparently no bill problems. I've never seen a TV sitcom with any bill problems.
Yeah, they don't show like the overdue bill or envelope in the mail. Like that doesn't happen often on sitcoms.
What were you telling me about Friends? About them living in New York City and having these...
Oh, that's a teaser. We're gonna get to that when we get down to our finances section. But yeah, just a spoiler, the lifestyle of a lot of people on TV, the way they live, unrealistic.
Why we picked today's topic is these people on TV with all these morals and these values, is that the way they are in real life? And do they make us better people? Does it make us better? Does it make us worse? Does it change us? Does it raise us? Or are we just mindlessly zoning out for 3 or 4 hours every day? Well, I want to start you off with this teaser. The average American watches 4 hours a day. So what that is that's, if you live to 65, that's 9 full years of watching TV. So if you have put that much attention on something, it has to have some influence on you.
Right. 9 years. That's what can you master in 9 years? Or if you're not thinking about mastering after 9 years, after 9 years of television, does that put a voice in your head? Like, do you sometimes, Todd, do you ever find yourself narrating your own life?
I do all the time. And what I do is if I think of something funny with one of my friends or I will rehearse it, and then when I see them, I run like a skit. And I've been doing it for years, and I'll practice it, I'll get it down, and it's to get that. It's like a little show I'll do for them.
Right.
If my friends knew how much time I work on material for them, they'd be flattered.
How much you're planning out bits for their entertainment.
Things that I've observed from them, then I put it into a little skit about trying to make it funny, I guess.
Right. Well, there's a little bit of expectation to that. There's you can't really have that skill without first having a narrator in your head that isn't you. I mean, that is in the voice of television. Now, I ask about narration specifically because one of our delusions that I looked up is something called the Truman Show delusion. Have you ever seen the movie The Truman Show?
I haven't seen that, no.
It's a fun sort of comedy drama starring Jim Carrey, and he lives a suburbanite life where he goes around thinking that he's got like this ideal Leave It to Beaver thing going on, and he doesn't realize he's on a television show.
So it's a reality show, but he doesn't know that.
Yeah, it was almost like a proto-reality show. Like he's living a normal life. Everyone in his life, his immediate town, is part of the show. They're all actors except for him. And so they put him through his paces. They basically make a drama around him.
They humor him.
They humor him, yes. And he doesn't realize that he is in the top show in the world. So he's basically a prisoner in this life. And as he discovers or starts to suspect that he's being surrounded by cameras and narrators and set designers, it becomes about his escape. Now, naturally, if we watch too much television, we do get sort of an inner voice for this. We get a narrator. Something I've experienced in writing is if you listen to an audiobook or read long enough, more than 40 minutes is what I've heard, you can emulate the narration style or the vocal cadence.
The pace, the rhythm, that makes sense.
Yeah, exactly. So whatever you're listening to or whatever you're reading, you can sort of emulate that. That's a sidebar to this. But some people, after The Truman Show came out, they started developing real psychological delusions about this. It's called the Truman Show delusion, and it was presented by Joel Gold and Ian Gold. And I'm going to read off a couple of these cases just because they're fascinating. This is the most extreme version of Hollywood changing our expectations that I could find. The Purge, the Louisville Purge, is a good one. This is a runner-up to that. So they found one case of the Truman Show delusion where somebody claimed the 9/11 attacks were fabricated and the cameras had been planted in his eyes to capture his reactions to the 9/11 attacks. So he thought that these were happening to get a rise out of him. Like the Truman Show, they would throw life upsets and strange things at Jim Carrey to get his reactions.
For entertainment value.
Exactly. This guy thought that they were doing that to him, so much so that he traveled to New York to see if the towers were still standing. Later, he was diagnosed as a schizophrenic, so that actually explains why he started going through this delusion. Another man in this case study attempted suicide 3 times to escape the taping, quote unquote.
He was paranoid, people following him around, and
yeah, it's most of these cases they kind of take pretty sad turns, or they end up having close relations to schizophrenia, the diagnosis eventually.
Extreme paranoia.
Yeah, and we're not sharing any of the names in this because it's there's no reason to. The delusion themselves are hyped enough. Another case they worked on, they called this man Mr. D. He actually worked on reality TV shows, and he became convinced that he was being controlled by a film crew. So this is somebody, you would think that working in Hollywood or working in the industry would make you immune to sort of the magic. Like, of course, you would know when cameras were following you around. But this guy worked in reality TV, and he became convinced of the Truman Show delusion. So anybody is susceptible to it. The Truman Show delusion, I mean. But it seems to be that it's accompanied with schizophrenia. So that's our most extreme example. You and I, Todd... Wait, I'll ask first. Are you being recorded at all times?
I do think the world revolves around me, but I'm not sure that's the same thing.
Okay. Same thing here. So we're on good footing.
I'm the leading actor of my own movie.
Right. So we're both potentially narcissists. However, we probably don't have cameras following us. So the first question I want to address as normal human beings who are the star of our own show, how many times do you have to hear a commercial or how many times do you have to hear a narration on television before it sticks, before it makes you susceptible?
I was just thinking about this today because I'm thinking, why do Coke and Pepsi still have to advertise and pay for room on shelves in stores?
Right, they're the only game in town.
Yeah, how could they should be above that, but I'm not sure. You tell me how many times.
If they miss one commercial, RC Cola will sweep in.
Yeah, they don't even...
Yeah, I get you on that. So we're going back to old school advertising. This is when, the golden age of television. They came up with something called the Rule of 7. And the idea is if you run something past a viewer's eyes 7 times or more, generally you will catch their attention enough to where it becomes actionable, to where somebody will actually think when they see, like if I show you an Arby's commercial 7 times, then you might actually consider stopping if you're passing by an Arby's. This has been refined over the years. I was looking at Psychology Today, and LinkedIn had a really good article about this. And it's called the mere exposure effect. And it means that when a listener or viewer develops a preference for what you're showing them, it's with repetition. And the repetition reaches its peak around 10 exposures, roughly 10 to 20. If you overexpose them, you ever see a commercial that just you've seen it too many times and it starts killing you, like it bothers you?
Absolutely. There's some of the football commercials they were funny about the first 6 times.
Yeah.
And now you want to turn the TV off when you see them.
Could you make a list of the annoying ones for you so I can just have them on repeat?
You're annoying enough yourself. You don't need any.
I don't need
props.
the assistance. Yeah. Let the commercials do the heavy lifting for me. So the mere exposure effect says that it's after about 20, when you get up to the 20 range and you start heading over that, that's when mere exposure becomes dislike. So 10 to 20 means you're going to get actionable responses from people if it's available. So like if I show you a Jell-O commercial 14 times, you may actually pick up a case of Jell-O on your way through the supermarket. If I get you with that same commercial 22, 24, 26 times, you start getting annoyed, you'll never touch Jell-O again.
That's why you want to change your commercial then.
You want to change your commercial.
Change your message, change your angle.
Exactly.
Actors, actresses.
Right. Get new look. I can't tell you how many Allstate or what is that, Flow with the insurance. That's why they have skits. They're made into story narratives, is because it looks like it's an evolving story, not just one repeated
It runs
thing.
that block and then they move on.
Exactly. So they're aiming to get you into that nice 10 to 20 mere exposure spot.
And I've noticed that on recently some of the insurance ones, they've changed the characters and run the exact same skit.
Yeah.
But they changed the faces, so it's new, but it's still the same hook.
Yeah, I see that with phone commercials, that they do the same trick. So the point we want to make with that is simply that we're all susceptible. You don't have to be suffering the Truman Show delusion. You are already in this, you're already a target of this mere exposure effect just by being a consumer that sees ads. Now I kind of want to do a meditation with you. So,
yoga meditation, I'm ready.
Yeah, I see you doing the pose. So close your eyes if you want. And I just want you to imagine somebody carrying groceries. A grocery bag. They're returning home. Maybe imagine just like a housewife or some woman carrying groceries. And Todd, I want to ask you, when you're imagining this, is it a plastic bag or a brown bag?
Brown bag.
Is there a French baguette and green leaves poking out the top of that bag?
It's kind of like crumpled and stuff's poking out the top. Yeah. Like she's about to drop it.
Right. So I make that joke because I was in I went to school for graphic design, and so they teach you archetypes, and we may have even talked about this on the podcast before. An archetype is basically a easy shorthand, like it's the expectation brains jump to when you're talking about stuff. If I say the word librarian, everyone has the same image roughly in their head.
The glasses, the hair up in the bun.
Exactly. Yeah. Same thing with the groceries, carrying groceries home. Usually it's going to be you can see this in movies, by the way. You watch movies, you see somebody coming back from the store, almost always they're carrying a brown bag, it's got leafy greens poking out the top, and a French baguette. Like they literally teach people in graphic design to draw archetypes to tap into that. Now, real quick, same game, same meditation. I know I'm not doing the meditational chant correctly. I want you to imagine France. Did you just think of the Eiffel Tower?
Yes.
Okay. Now imagine Russia. I'm guessing your mind either went to sort of a big brutalist concrete building or a frozen tundra.
I'm a Siberia guy, so
okay, there we go. So this archetypes thing, it works for both places and it works also for people. So we talked about the librarian. You can do this with anything, like the jock or the preppy person. They have a term when you're casting somebody for a role called central casting. So this all pretty much falls under the same umbrella of we have expectations because we've seen enough television, and those are being designed.
They want a certain look for the bad guys and the good guys.
Yeah, it's
a certain voice, a certain attitude, a certain energy.
Yeah, they're casting for people that will evoke an image that will fit an archetype, and it makes it easier for us to sort of understand. And that's it. It's all shorthand. So when you're thinking about maybe I'm not susceptible to the narrative of television, or I'm a grown adult, this stuff doesn't affect me, It already has. It's we key off of archetypes. We hear the narrative in our heads. We're just generally good enough at not convoluting that with reality.
You've been overexposed. It's way too late for you.
Yeah. Oh, me specifically, it's way too late for me, Todd. I already think in movies and archetypes, so for the rest of you, save yourselves. The good news is I am not the only person who thinks in these movie terms. In fact, it sounds like most of the city of Louisville also thinks in movie tropes and movie archetypes.
They did, and they bought in for that weekend. We're going back to the story that we began with.
The Purge.
The Louisville Purge. Well, many games and parties were skipped because people heard about this, and a lot of local businesses lost money. There was even rumored to be a giraffe that was set loose.
Oh, was there actually a giraffe?
There wasn't.
Oh, darn.
There were 2 murders that were blamed on the Purge and reported that they were because of the Purge. Later, they were found to be unrelated. But high school football games were canceled. The Kentucky State Fair was going on, and the attendance was very low. So there's a loss to all the vendors and everyone who set up there.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, bowling alleys were closed. A huge cost to all the emergency services, the fire department and the police department.
Oh, naturally, people were calling for Purge services, right?
Now, Joe, you can't put a dollar value on how much stress this caused to all the locals.
When you first read the narrative, I was thinking that the Purge, that this was just sort of like a little kid prank gone wrong, and it just got reported a lot. So this had real economic ramifications.
Absolutely. So that whole weekend, imagine all bars, restaurants, movie theaters were either closed or they were half a capacity.
Wow, that was a prelude to COVID.
Exactly.
I also noticed in our episode doc, you had something written in here, basically from the planning of this episode. You had written something about the Cosby Show versus Married with Children. I got to ask about that.
Okay, when I was a kid, the Cosby Show was the #1 sitcom. Everybody watched it every week.
Oh, sure.
You talk about school the next day. People went to work about. Now, it's an African American family with 2 doctors, perfect, gorgeous kids. Mm-hmm. But there was other show that was a big hit show on this new network called Fox at the time. It was called Married with Children. And it was a shoe salesman, white trash. They talked about sex and drugs and smoking, infidelity. There was weight shame. And it was the most inappropriate show.
Right. Yeah, that show was wild.
Yeah. So you fast forward to today, and Bill Cosby, Mr. Perfect, turns out he was raping women all this whole time he was doing this show as this high and mighty. You know, he's on TV talking about other comics who swear and this and that, judging. And
right, he turns out to be a sex crim in sweaters. Yeah.
And all the Married with Children, there's a whole bunch of actors and actresses on there are still acting and still relevant and still on hit shows today. So I just think that's so funny because they're just so polar opposite. You have this white trash, poor family with no morals, and then you have this African-American, high value, high educated.
Right. Yeah, and the Married with Children. I mean, Ted is on Modern Family or some other show like that. Peggy, the wife, she's been in several shows. I mean, she was in Sons of Anarchy. So you're right. They all went in to have a really good career. So this is kind of perfect. Since we're on the subject, do you want to talk about how Hollywood changes the perception of family dynamics?
Yes, the perfect family.
Right.
That we can't emulate in real life.
Yeah, we all want the Cosbys, but we will settle for Married with Children as long as it's
our
fun
life resembles
and clever.
Married with Children.
Yeah, I think more people relate to that in The Simpsons than anything. I mean, I think my friends at least, when I talk to them, they all relate to The Simpsons, their own family more.
What about the Brady Bunch? There's 3 kids from the mom, 3 kids from the dad, and they just blended together perfectly.
Right, they all got along.
I have never seen that. Blended families are battles.
Yeah, one of them would have been in prison. Like one of them they don't talk to, they don't show up. It would be a mess in real life.
You notice they never talk about their ex-mom or dad either.
Yeah, it's because they both murdered them. There's a big backyard, and there's a reason for that. So let's talk how Hollywood changes family dynamics. First, let's talk turkey, because you can't really have a family dynamic without having a place to put the family. And most hardships in families, and most divorces are entirely centered around money.
Mm-hmm.
So
bankruptcy and divorce go very well together.
Yes. So let's talk about how much these people on TV are making, or at least how much their environment is implying. Because I don't know about you, but when I was watching TV as a kid, I would look at the apartment and the living situation of the people on TV, and I would compare it to my own. Like my family, the way we interacted, a lot of it was based on our house. Like, you can only run so far if you have a small house. Like, if somebody's annoying you, you can only get like one room away.
Or like me, a small apartment.
Right, yeah. You have to... everyone is going on a bike ride if anybody is fighting. Like, everybody has to scatter out of the house. So the amount of misery based on where you're living, that comes into play. So first, the first one I found, which is very fun, we're talking what we teased earlier. How much are the apartments worth in television shows? And how much are we basing our own metric of success on this? You've seen the show Friends?
Oh, yeah.
I think everyone has. I don't think I can ask that question legally. It's kind of like swearing on a Bible. They go to court and they say, "Have you seen the show Friends? Now swear on this." Monica's apartment, the main apartment that they all hang out in, according to this is the Corcoran Real Estate Group, they estimated that house in Friends, or the apartment, if it was rent controlled, would be $4,500 a month. Not rent controlled, meaning just open market, would be $7,000 to $8,000 per month.
Holy cow, that's Manhattan prices.
It is. And
NYC.
after I looked at this this rating, this scale, I went back and I watched an episode, and I thought, oh my God, that is it's a huge apartment. I didn't think about that. Like the square footage and like the multiple bedrooms on one wall and like the setup of it. It's a massive space for like 2 or 3 people.
In their 20s.
Yes. I'm so glad you said that. Because they're all starting their careers. They're all young. And when they start the show, Monica is a chef. Rachel is a waitress. And those are the 2 main breadwinners. So like...
But for an $8,000 house payment, you need to be an anesthesiologist, a radiologist, or a dentist.
Yeah, you need a technical job.
An attorney or something.
Yeah. And when I say chef, in the start of the show, like later on she ends up being an amazing chef. Like she ends up owning a restaurant or something like that. But at the start of the show, she is not a head chef. She's like a line chef.
She's a cook.
She's a cook. and the other one is a waitress. So they're sitting in a very minimum $4,500 apartment on a chef, and that kind of retooled my expectations just hearing that. I went back and I thought about, as like young Joe sitting on the carpet watching TV, and I'm thinking, why are we so miserable? Like, why is our house such a dump?
Right.
It's like, oh, right, because people on TV have amazing apartments. Like they don't even...
But in real life, they couldn't afford to pay the utilities or live in this building.
Right, exactly. I'm setting my expectations based on somebody else's living accommodations, when in reality, there's no way they could afford it. Like of course, my family can't afford a good place. Why would I expect them to in Manhattan?
And you notice they're never at work.
Yeah.
They're always off all together at the same time.
Right.
How realistic is that? There's not that work hangover. We all have that work fatigue.
Right. You never just see an episode where the friends are all just sitting there too tired to talk.
Complaining about work.
Yeah. That'd be a very boring episode.
Asking to borrow $50 because get paid on Thursday.
Yes.
Real life.
So I've got another one for us. The Simpsons. I went after this one. I looked into the research behind it because I wanted to know, because their house kind of looked kind of dumpy. Like it's cartoon, it's drawn in, it's goofy. It's supposed to look like they make jokes about how cheap their house is sometimes.
I was talking like a blue collar, basic house, working man, working woman's house.
Exactly. That's a really good way to put it, and that's really what Homer is. He's a working man. You know, they both work steady jobs. So I found online somebody had paused the episode right where Homer Simpson has his pay stub out. And so I first thought I was going to have to find, everybody there. The internet has already done all the work we would ever have to do to find the finances. I expected someone to estimate how much Homer makes. A nuclear safety inspector or plant position like he has. It ended up being something like 75 to 80K a year. But we don't need that. We don't need to do the math because it turns out the show just tells us Homer Simpson makes $11.99 an hour in season 7, which comes out to be about $24,000 a year, and with inflation, that's about $37K a year now. Their house is estimated by Mavoto Real Estate to be worth $289K. So a $300,000 house when Homer Simpson is the main breadwinner at $11.99.
Doesn't work. I can already tell you.
Yeah,
Can't afford it, and then a wife and 3 kids ain't happening.
Right, a wife, 3 kids, and all of the hijinks they go through, like
All the
every
broken
episode.
bones.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was thinking. Like broken bones. Homer's had like 3 heart surgeries.
Yeah.
Every episode involves like major property damage or them doing something that just incurs incredible financial costs.
And with a son like Bart, you would miss some work.
Yeah, not just miss some work. Bart is basically just property damage walking. So the short answer here, what we're trying to get across is, do not set your expectations for your house or your environment based on television, because you will be disappointed.
It's so unrealistic, it's not even fair.
Yeah, that's a really good way to put it.
These are people who are too pretty, too much time on their hands, and no bills.
Yeah, they've got money just under floorboards or something. Like there's the Friends, the people from Friends, they've got like gold doubloons buried or something. So our next question is, okay, so the houses are unrealistic. What about the family unit itself? The whole idea of like the family structure. I don't want to bore everybody with our podcast, so I'm going to be real quick about this. But I went digging. I wanted to know this whole the nuclear family structure, the history of it, where we came up with the idea of that. And it gets very swampy and convoluted very quickly, even for somebody who's used to doing convoluted research. I ran into a lot of things like articles about religion and Catholic structure and like church structure. Like a lot of the family structure that we see today, a lot of it has a lot of Puritan and religious beliefs or practice.
Faith background, Christian background.
Yeah, exactly. And a lot of it also comes down to what's financially feasible, industrial revolution. Like it really ties back to everything. But the number one indicator I could find, the one consistent metric for what a nuclear family looks like is Christmas. So, Todd, I'll phrase this as a question. When you imagine Christmas with the family, what are your expectations?
I can tell you, it's right in my head. So you have mom and dad sleeping in.
Okay.
And the kids wake mom and dad up, and they're kind of tired, and they go downstairs. So there's 2 kids, there's a dog, and mom and dad, and there's all these presents and food and excitement, and everyone's in their pajamas, and everybody's happy.
Perfect. That is a perfect picture of a nuclear family at Christmas. How about Christmas evening? What does everyone do during Christmas evening?
We're making gingerbread houses. This is so unlike how I grew up, so I'm laughing, right? But that's how I see it. Like a Christmas Story, they're decorating the tree and they're drinking hot chocolate. Everybody's all lovey-dovey. It's this big love fest.
Yeah. You said it just there. The perfect answer is, this wasn't my family, but this is what I imagine. And that's same with me, same with you. I think a lot of our listeners are going to be the same. that you had something similar to that your family tried to make that image work, but there's a real history behind this, why we have that image in our head, why we copy that and paste it. Kind of like when I asked you about the baguette, what does somebody coming back from the grocery store look like? What does Russia look like? What does France look like? What does Christmas and family look like are similar. We've got these stamped in our heads, almost like they've been photoshopped in to our brains for what does a nuclear family look like. And it really just comes back to Christmas. Like the research I could find, it's just so arrows pointing to it. So we're going to go really quickly through the history of Christmas and why it wasn't a nuclear family holiday until it became branded. And I mean that in a real sense. I mean, like, really
monetized, right?
Literally monetized, branded, and stamped into our brains. Originally, Christmas was Saturnalia. It was a drunken, hedonistic party where peasants and slaves commanded, Greece and Rome for a month. And then during the Middle Ages, it became winter solstice, which, again, was basically a drunken carnival. Kind of like Mardi Gras.
Spring break for poor people.
Oh, my God. Yes. No, absolutely.
We let the peasants and slaves run the city for a month. They used to know how to party back those days, man.
Oh, totally. People say when I want to, like, what would you do if you were a time traveler? I'd go back to one of these celebrations. Like, I wouldn't want to go kill Hitler. I would want to just show up during, the Middle Ages Mardi Gras, the winter solstice.
You can do whatever you want with whoever you want.
Right. Yeah, the winter solstice was kind of like Saturnalia. Beggars would go around and crown one of their own as the Lord of Misrule, and poor people would go house to house demanding alcohol and food. And if rich people didn't give them food or booze, they'd get beaten or harassed. So when you say it was a poor man's Mardi Gras, totally, it really was.
You run out of food, you get your ass kicked.
Yeah. If you don't hand over the hooch or something to eat, we are beating down your door and we are kicking your ass. And then when the Puritans basically were running Boston from 1659 to 1681, Christmas was outlawed.
Oh, so they said forget it because this is
Screw it.
Our values.
Yeah, that's exactly right. So it's so funny now to think that, Christmas is very much a Puritan holiday now, that, keep Christ in Christmas, Christmas is holy, Christmas is pure. No, it wasn't. The Puritans literally outlawed it, from 1659 to 1681. It was a drunken, poor man's revelry, and then they outlawed it.
And that wasn't 1,000 years ago. That wasn't that long ago.
No, that was pretty recent. Then came Washington Irving, and he appealed to people's sense of peace and warm-heartedness during the holiday. He kind of reimagined Christmas as a whole, and between him and Charles Dickens, they literally rebranded Christmas as a caroling event. Actually, Charles Dickens wrote A Christmas Carol, and then the movie basically did the rest. That 1-2 punch between Washington Irving and Charles Dickens, it fully swung it from debauchery, carousing, beat up, poor people beating up rich people for their food and their booze. It completely rebranded it, 100%.
To singing and love and the season.
And then the final blow that turned Christmas into the nuclear family postcard that it is now. And this I got from a great Mental Floss article. I really think everyone should look this up. It's a Wonderful Life. Have you seen It's a Wonderful Life?
Yeah.
It's the old Christmas standard. I really believe this. I think that movie did more to set into concrete the family structure of America than anything else.
And then every Christmas movie followed suit.
Every Christmas movie after follows It's a Wonderful Life.
And got every generation in their own way.
And it sort of it crystallized how we view the nuclear family. Funny enough, according to this Mental Floss article, It's a Wonderful Life was a complete and total box office dud. By rights, we should not have really heard of it. It wasn't popular. It wasn't particularly good. What ended up happening is it made $3.7 million back when it was released for theaters, It lost $500,000 basically. Like the people that made it gave up on it, and they let it slip into public domain.
So it was in the red and went all the way down to free movies.
Yeah, exactly.
Dollar store movies.
It skipped the $5 bin and it went straight to free for everyone. Yeah, once something
you can watch this and it sucks, man.
Yeah,
that's shocking because that's such a movie that everybody knows.
Right. It's like what if a free movie on TNT became like the gold standard? Like I was thinking of those cheesy action movies that they used to run all the time, but
in $1 trillion industry too.
Yeah. So It's a Wonderful Life slips into public domain. All TV stations around the world can now play it for free at Christmas, and they do. I mean, like it's one of the main Christmas movies that just gets played over and over ad nauseum by most stations because it's completely free. And because it gets so much exposure like that, it becomes the Christmas standard. It's a Wonderful Life becomes the movie everyone just thinks of when they think Christmas. So just kind of a fluke there, and suddenly we get the image of a nuclear family. It's every time anytime a bell rings, an angel gets its wing or something like that.
Something like that. I think you're honest. That's the gist
butchering
of it.
the quote, but so that's where we get the image of the nuclear family. Like a huge part of it is branding, basically.
So when your family doesn't have all that love and presence and that space, that perfect house, and the cars that don't have car payments, the mortgage that don't have mortgage, it just makes you feel bad.
Yeah.
That you wish you were in the Cosby family and not your own.
Right. We would even settle for The Simpsons. Like if we had a Simpsons Christmas, that would have been lovely. But no, not even that. But it's all branding and unrealistic, basically.
It's all make-believe.
Yeah. So now that we've talked about how shows can sort of twist our image of or set our expectations for family, what are we looking at as far as like love? I mean, we're going to get into personal relationships, how much our expectations are formed by television, right?
Well, absolutely. And the first one is being what we're attracted to. So we see people on TV who are movie stars or they're in their own TV shows, and we're attracted to those people because of their personalities and their looks.
Right.
It also shows how we twist our expectations of our significant other who we marry. We now want our significant other to be all types of love. We want them to be tall, thin, handsome, beautiful, huge house, perfect behaving kids, and $200,000 a year jobs where you're never at work.
Right. Brady Bunch.
Yeah, people who make a lot of money are always at work, just so in real life.
Yeah. Yeah, that's if the Brady Bunch were realistic, both those parents would have been out of the house all the time.
But what's changed recently is people are increasingly seeking self-actualization within their marriages. They're expecting their partners to be all things to them. Now, Joe, what it used to be, when you look for a partner, you're looking for another set of hands. Mm-hmm. Somebody to work with, to get through life with. But now we're looking at our spouses to complete us and make us a better version of ourselves, to be more authentic version of ourselves.
Okay, that I think that rings true with me.
Now, you hear this a lot. He's a wonderful man, a loving father. I like and respect him, but I feel really stagnant in our relationship. I feel like I'm not growing. And I'm not willing to stay in a marriage where I feel stagnant for the next 30 years. But you're hearing these values that what most people would say are important, right? Mm-hmm. Would you want to trade somebody in that for a different model, or?
I have read way too much history, and so my views are completely skewed on this. I usually read about people who in the Victorian era where you would be married because it was financially stable, it made sense, it increased your station in life. You weren't so much partners as much as like business partners, like it was an arrangement. And if you also loved each other, that was a huge bonus.
That was last on the list.
Right. It was
love will come as your family
Yeah.
Forces you to marry the.
Yeah, you could not expect a partner to be a friend quite so much as somebody who just made your life livable and made things attainable for you. So with you, is that a consideration? I mean, like, do you expect a partner who is?
I say it all the time, and I've thought it all this time before we did the research for this.
Yeah.
I think I need somebody to bring out the best in me.
Okay.
So what I'm saying is, if I'm not doing what I'm supposed to be doing, I can blame it on my partner.
Oh, right. Okay.
See, and it's easy to put that back on them. And I've heard this a lot with my friends who are going through divorce. If the man or woman makes a lot of money, I hear that they're never giving me any attention. And if it's a stay-at-home person who doesn't have any income, they need to make some effing money.
Right.
So you can't win either way.
Yeah. I hadn't thought about that, but yeah, putting your self-actualization on your partner, but that phrase stagnation or lack of growth, feeling or thinking that with somebody else, I mean, that's so bizarre, but you're right.
They're finding their self-esteem in their spouse, and if they're not happy with who they are or where their life is or the attention they're getting, they feel like it's time for divorce.
Okay, so you use the D word there. You ready to talk about divorce?
Oh yeah, I've done it.
Okay.
That's right on it.
So if we get you started, you may not stop talking about divorce. As somebody who's been divorced, do you feel like it's adequately represented on television?
It isn't. And I think, too, we're talking about Hollywood, what we see couples. Usually we see them as a supportive listening. They don't throw they don't throw things at each other. They don't throw the divorce word around.
Yeah.
They're not those toxic relations.
So in real life, you're saying that some people use divorce as like a nuclear button. That's the ultimate threat.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, and you don't hear that. I've never seen a Simpsons episode where they throw it around casually. So, divorce isn't really represented that well on TV. What about children?
The children are always the perfect kids. They usually have some kind of problem, and then you watch the parents will guide them through it, right?
Right.
This is your story writer, so you know about this. The guide.
So, I want to talk. This is going to lead into me being a bit of a cynic, but there are rules for writing children. There are rules for writing, and this is not from me. This is if you go to there's a couple master classes about this from writers. There are also writers' blogs and forums where they talk about this. The way you deal with children in television, if they don't bring in interesting conflict to a story, you write them out. And a couple of examples of this are the show Dexter. He had a baby, and it was a huge plot point. Like it was for a season or two. It was like the central conflict. And then the baby was being taken care of by a nanny every episode, or a friend. Or it allowed him to introduce new characters to the show because whoever's taking care of the baby would have to be introduced to the audience. But it became more of a plot device than a child. Same thing with Friends, Ross's kid. Ross had a kid. I completely forgot about that until we wrote this episode.
It's interesting.
Yeah, Ross had a son, which is insane. But if a child...
It's developed more of the story.
Yeah.
And introduce characters. It's not...
Right. And I think novels are sometimes even more guilty of this, where you'll have a kid like Game of Thrones. The youngest kid, Bran, was out of the show for like 4 or 5 seasons. Like, he just didn't see him, and then he came back to die in one episode.
But they have to have something going on with them that is a major cause, pain.
Yeah, they have to bring conflict to the show. Otherwise, it feels like they're hindering the main character. So in my real life, Todd, if you had a kid, I would say they're hindering your character. You're less interesting with a kid, and I'd like you to give it to somebody else.
But you have to be, again, on the financial side, you have to be able to afford a nanny.
Right.
Or
yeah.
afford to ship the kid off for 6 years with a family member.
Exactly. Yeah, you have to have the money to do that. Yeah, a lot of this stuff, this is kind of upsetting, Todd, but a lot of this Hollywood expectation stuff, a lot of it comes down to money.
Yeah, and a lot of the research, that's where we're coming up. A lot of problems. That's the root of all of it. It's not evil, it's finances.
Right. Everything is a balance hinged on money. No, you can't have Hollywood expectations for anything. Like, Hollywood sets us up for these expectations. The only answer for any of them is money. You want a better house. You want the nuclear family structure. You want all this stuff to work. It's money. So we're gonna move on slightly because we're covering a lot of material here. We're talking all relations and all relation expectations, the way Hollywood sets them up. Have you heard of something called the Bechdel test?
No.
So we're talking about, now we're going to transition to women being represented in television and film. This came out of a cartoon that was made by Alison Bechdel in 1985, and it was out of a comic strip called Dykes to Watch Out For. And the test was just sort of like a snarky, interesting way to demonstrate that women are not represented well in most media. And the test was, do two women have a conversation with each other in a film or show, and it's not about men? Like, it's not about the other male characters. So they're having a valid conversation with each other. Oh, and they have to be named. There are like a couple rules to this, but they have to be two female characters with names, or female identifying with names. And this there are other podcasts. There's actually one called The Bechdel Test, another podcast about this. But it just, we're talking like divorce isn't represented, children aren't represented, women aren't represented. Half the population is, it's shocking. There's lists online for how many movies don't pass this test. And there are some on there that are like female oriented, or at least marketed to females, that don't pass. Yeah, that don't pass the test to represent women, which is ironic and kind of funny and sad. So, speaking of representation, I want to play a game with you. So we're gonna talk Disney, because for my money, growing up, the real standard for children's television was Disney, and Disney cartoons specifically. So from 1937 to 1991, the Hans Christian Andersen run, where they were basing all of their Disney on that. We're going to talk Disney princes. Because I remember Disney princesses are huge. Like, they make all the money in Disney. And most people, I think, can name the princesses. Well, let's just go through a couple. How many can you name? Can you think of any of the princesses?
That are coming to mind.
Yeah.
Give me something.
Well, I'll give you a hint. The movies are named after them.
Sadly, that doesn't help.
Okay. We won't be treading into anti-Todd territory. I finally found Kryptonite. So we've got Beauty and the Beast. That's one of the few that isn't named after her. She's Bella. And then we've got Cinderella, Snow White, Sleeping Beauty.
Okay. I thought I had a princess in the name.
Yeah, well, not so much. No, they're just...
But they're princesses.
They're princesses, yeah.
Yes.
If they're wearing a dress and they're running in general.
Frolicking.
They're frolicking. Yeah, most of them are either running away from something, or somebody's chasing them, or they're running to a prince. The reason I wanted to bring this game up is a lot of people complain about female representation in film. But we start by having young women watch princess movies from Disney. And I didn't think about this until somebody on a blog was talking about this. I found this in a blog, and they're like, hey, if you want to take a reverse Bechdel test, name some of the Disney princes.
Yeah, they show up for 10 seconds at the end.
Yeah, they're not.
They kiss and they're gone. They're these handsome, clean-cut guys, but they get about a 10-second little blip.
Exactly. Yeah, their representation is they are the force that the female character is chasing after, like they're a prize.
And they don't even have any speaking lines.
Yeah. We know that they are technically royalty because they are a prince.
They're dressed nice.
Dressed nice, and we know they have money.
They have a white horse. You can see it. They're wearing it.
Almost always they have a white horse. So our only real standards for a male representation in Disney princess movies, which basically raises young kids, is if you want to get married, you're going to have to be a prince and be born wealthy. So I'm going to read these off just for fun, just to make me feel slightly worse, because I didn't remember any of these. The only one I remembered was Prince Eric, who actually has a speaking role in The Little Mermaid, and you see him multiple times. There's Prince Ferdinand, Prince Charming. Now, I thought that was a nickname, Prince Charming, but that's his actual name.
It's a real dude.
Real dude, yeah. Prince Philip, Prince Eric, and then Prince Adam. I thought Prince Adam's name was Beast. I literally thought Beauty and the Beast that was the only... Like, I don't know.
Yeah, why would his mom name him Beast?
I was a dumb kid. I had problems. And then we don't really count the post-1991 princes, because that's when they actually started starring in the movies. We have Aladdin, Prince Naveen, Flynn and Kristoff from... wait, Flynn wasn't a prince. I think he was a thief. But we also get Kristoff and Prince Hans from the... Oh, man, I'm going to get dragged online. The one that was based on the Ice Queen. What was that one? Frozen. Yeah. Frozen. So when you find my corpse in a trunk, that's the internet came for me. That's what happened.
8-year-olds got you.
8-year-olds got me. Yeah, 8-year-olds, grown women. So yeah, we don't really represent. We don't represent in Hollywood anything that is inconvenient in that moment. We put archetypes in place of something that we don't want to think about in that moment. If you don't want a kid getting in the way of your main character doing things, put the kid in daycare or give them to some other character to take care of. If you don't want to think about how women are thinking or feeling in any given movie, just have the two women talk about a dude. Don't represent them. If you need a male character who is going to be an attraction for the female princess, don't give him a meaningful name. Just make sure he's wealthy and he has a position.
Very generic towards the end.
Right. So
let her
really
overcome all the obstacles on her own. She
Yeah.
doesn't need a man's help.
Or she sleeps through the obstacles in Sleeping Beauty. So I kind of want to get into this just a little bit. We talked about the Louisville Purge, and that we kind of laugh. Like the reason we started with that as a narrative instead of something more grim or serious, or instead of covering the Truman Show, is it would have been it's more amusing to look at something like the Purge and say, what a bunch of goofballs. Why would a city fall for a prank like that?
I'm not that dumb. It wouldn't happen to me.
Right, of course. It can't happen to me. I'm too realistic for that. So, in your opinion, Todd, what have you fallen for? Like, what are some ways you've separated your perceptions from TV, and how have you tried to get out of that trap?
I think the big thing being my expectations for a partner, that I really wanted monetary. I wanted to have everything. And I think what I learned from TV Hollywood is that to be loved, you have to be the best. You have to be the best looking. You have to always win the game.
Oh.
You always have to get the girl. You always have to get the promotion. So I was never really happy with what I had. I couldn't enjoy this point I was at in the relationship I was at. I always thought I wanted to do better, or I wanted to get a better job. So it just taught me the separation was being grateful for what I have right now.
Okay, so you were looking for love, and to attain that, you thought you needed to get Hollywood levels of success. You needed to...
The stuff and the attention, sex stuff and
okay.
attention.
You needed the Karate Kid ending, where you walk out and you have a trophy in one arm and the girl in the other, and you're amazing at something.
Those 80s movies.
Yeah.
Where you get the girl, you lose a lot, but at the end you win the game, you get the girl, and you're at a dance. So yeah.
Right.
What about you? How do you separate the...
My greatest wish in life is to just write good fiction and to write entertaining and be able to capture people's attention. But to do that, you first start by learning classics and tropes and archetypes, and you start by learning how good stories are strung together. So I trained my brain to expect everything story, everything Hollywood, everything novel, or novel is in books. So I literally trained myself to expect all the wrong things. Like, I trained myself to expect Hollywood everything.
So when you know all the tricks, you still believe that it could happen in real life.
Oh, it's so much worse. If you know all the tricks, you want those things to happen. You frame it in your own mind.
So you think you can create it. If you create it on paper, you can create it in real life too.
Yes, precisely. And when it doesn't match up, it just leads to disappointment after disappointment.
Well, there's an old motivational thing about that. Like, we're the leading actors and actresses. The problem is the rest of the world doesn't have the script.
Yes.
They're playing their own script. They're not running yours.
Right. Unfortunately, nobody else is on board with your Truman Show. Like, nobody else is carrying a boom mic behind me. It's just me narrating my own head.
As Americans, we've had a love affair with Hollywood's version of reality for generations. Easily since the first official Hollywood film was finished in 1908, The Count of Monte Cristo. Since then, we've been borrowing our expectations and perceptions from TV, movies, and commercials and integrating them into our lives. We take brand advice and political beliefs from commercials based on our mere exposure. We associate landmarks and cities with locations we've seen on TV. Almost like we've copy and pasted movies into our picture of reality. Our expectations for income, our homes, our apartments, and to a limited degree, our family structure are cribbed from Hollywood. Even our expectation from our spouses, our loved ones, can be framed by Hollywood from a very young age. In short, we've all been given a template of what to expect by movie and TV producers. So if someone screams, "The Purge is on," why wouldn't we believe it, even if it's just for a day? You've been listening to The Re-Engineered You. Thank you so much for listening to the show. You mean the world to us. We have a new episode every week.
You can connect with us at www.re-engineeredyou.com, where we have research links, show notes, and blog articles for each of our episode. We appreciate feedback, spirited debates, and purging advice if you have it.
We're purging all other podcasts.
That's right.
We're not experts in anything, but we've got an opinion on everything.
And speaking of opinions, I have a review here, if you want me to read it, Todd.
Please, iTunes review. 5-star.
This is from JoJo Podcast Enthusiast. He says, "Blown away. This was a well-crafted and produced podcast. Thought-provoking and interesting topics, which kept me engaged the whole time. I can't wait to listen to the next episode. More of these, please."
Thank you. We appreciate your kind words. It means the world to us.
And if you want to leave us a review, we will read it. Eventually. We have a list.